Welcome back to Transform Your Mind to Transform Your Life, the podcast. You're listening to 5 Minute Fridays with Coach Myrna. Today, I want to talk on the topic lean into your pattern interrupts, the Tim Cook story of leadership, disruption, and growth. Have you ever had life throw you off course only to realize it was actually pointing you in the right direction? Welcome to the world of pattern interrupts, unexpected shifts that disrupt your routine, your plans, or even your identity. For many, they feel like setbacks, but for the wise, they're invitations to transform. Just ask Tim Cook, the unlikely CEO who stepped out of Steve Jobs' shadow and led Apple into a new era of innovation. So, what exactly is a pattern interrupt? In the personal development and psychology world, a pattern interrupt is a sudden change that breaks your normal way of thinking or behaving. It might be a job loss, a surprising opportunity, a relocation, or even a personal crisis. These disruptions shake you out of autopilot. That's when real personal growth becomes possible. How many times we get comfortable in situations. We're not very happy with them, but we are content with them. And then something comes wrong and shakes you out of your stupor. So, usually it's some kind of a crisis. You get a health issue, you lose your job, and you're living in this city. It was expensive, you couldn't afford stuff, but you didn't want to leave, you didn't want to move, but it just interrupts you. And usually, when something interrupts your pattern, it is not always the devil. Sometimes it's God pointing you to your purpose and destiny. So that's basically what I want to share with you today. And I want to use as a model the Tim Cook's journey into leaning into life disruptions. So who is Tim Cook? Just in case you don't know who he is, right? When Steve Jobs announced his departure from Apple due to health reasons, many doubted whether Tim Cook could ever fill his shoes. We all know that Steve Jobs was the visionary. Steve Jobs was the person that made Apple what it is today. But you can take someone to a certain point in the road and you're thinking, "Oh my goodness, there's nowhere to place to go," but then someone comes and raises that lid. I just did an episode about rising to the water always rises or seeks its own level. So it's the same thing. You can think that you're plateaued, but somebody can take you higher, right? And that's exactly what Tim Cook did, right? So Jobs was the visionary and Tim Cooks was the operations guy. And everybody says that a CEO needs to be a visionary. The operations guy is just the employee, can't be the CEO, can't lead. All that's not true, right? But it was that shift from operations to leadership to visionary to CEO that interrupted not only Apple's trajectory, but Cook's own role that would define the new kind of leadership success. He leaned in, not away. He didn't try to mimic Jobs. He doubled down on what made him unique: operations mastery, quiet strength, and empathetic leadership. My pastor's always preaching, and everybody says they want to be like him. But you can't be like him. I remember watching the movie where somebody said they wanted to be like Ray Charles, and the mother said, "Well, that job is already taken. You've got to be yourself. You can't say, 'I want to be like someone else.' You can idolize them, and you can want their success, but you can't ever be them. You've got to be your own self." So that's basically what Tim Cook did. He became his own self. And under his guidance, Apple grew into the first US company to reach 3 trillion. with a T, market cap. That's no small feat for a man whose leadership style was once called too quiet, too mousy. Nobody's going to listen because he's not making a lot of noise. You don't need to have noise, you just need to have steady and steady growth into the direction that you want to go. So let's look at lessons from Tim Cook's pattern interrupt. That's what we're doing a master class on. Tim Cook. All right. So the first thing he did was don't fight the shift. Feel it. Pattern interrupts are uncomfortable, but discomfort is often the birthplace of growth. Tim could have resisted the leadership spotlight. Instead, he embraced it, but on his own terms. So here's a leadership tip for you. When a change hits, don't cling to old identities. Let the shift shape the new you. How often we would say, we don't do it that way. We do it this way because that's the old way of doing it. Nobody likes change. Read the book, Who Moved My Cheese? Nobody likes change. So they always tell you that's not the way we do it. We do it this way. And you have to say, that's the old way of doing it. Now let's try my way. Let's try the new way. And if it doesn't work, then we will modify and shift it. But don't just cling to the old ways of doing things, because the old way of doing things is the old way of doing things. And there's always newer and better ways to do things all the time. So let the shift shape the new you. Number 2, lead with your strengths. Cook didn't try to become Jobs 2.0. He brought his own voice, measured, meticulous, and mission-driven. He leaned into purposeful leadership and made Apple a model for ethical supply chains, environmental sustainability, and employee well-being. All the things are important. It's not all about the dollar sign. It is about internal culture, right? Yep, that's how you succeed. So here's a leadership lesson from that. Authenticity builds credibility. Your team doesn't need a copy of someone else. They need the real you. Remember that show? Let the real you stand up, right? They want carbon copies. They want the real you, and they would appreciate it. Number 3, let disruption drive innovation. Under Cook's leadership, Apple expanded into new markets. The Apple Watch, we're in one now. Apple services like iCloud and Apple Music, and major investments in AR, AI, and health tech. So career tip, when life interrupts your pattern, ask it, what can I create now that wasn't possible before? A lot of people had to change direction after the pandemic, and many people found that the new direction was better for them and their family. How many of you now work from home, right? Before you used to have to get up and take the train or, drive for an hour and a half to and from work, and now you get to work from home, right? Podcasters came out in force. I'm working from home. Beautiful thing. So many things changed directions after the pattern interrupt of the pandemic. And guess what? A lot of people made millions in the process. So how do you lean into your own pattern interrupts? Whether you're facing a career change, a life disruption, or personal transformation, here are 3 ways to channel your inner Tim Cook. Number 1, pause and reflect. Don't rush to fix the disruption. Sit with it. Let it teach you. Number 2, own your own voice. Bring your unique strengths to the table. You don't have to lead like someone else. Be yourself. We already mentioned that. Number 3, pivot with purpose. We all got to learn to pivot. We all know that life is not linear, right? Things will happen that you've got to pivot. And if you can't pivot, then guess what? You're not going to take the chances. You are not going to grab the low hanging fruit if you can't pivot and you're stuck in your old patterns. Use the change to innovate. This might be the start of something greater than you imagined. Final thoughts. Disruption is a divine invitation. Tim Cook teaches us that the world doesn't need another Steve Jobs. It needs leaders who are unafraid to embrace their own evolution. Your pattern interrupt could be the launch pad for your legacy. So, the next time life throws you off track, don't panic. Lean in. That interruption might be your moment. Your ladder could have been hanging on the wrong wall or leaning against the wrong wall all the time. And your pattern interrupt isn't allowing you to lean it against the right wall, the wall that God needed you to be in from the very beginning. So lean into your pattern interrupts. When life gives you lemons, make a lemonade. When something happens out of the ordinary, you lose your job, maybe you're become disabled and you can't do the things you used to do anymore. Think about what you can do. Your brain is always working. There are so many good inspirational stories about people who have leaned into the pattern interrupt, people who have decided that, you know what, I can't do this thing anymore, but I can do this thing. Amazing, amazing. So, yes, don't let your pattern interrupt scare you. So, just realize that God can be opening up new doors. And the one last thing I will say, when one door closes, another door opens. It's scripture and it's truth. So, thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of 5 Minute Fridays with Coach Myrna. Today, we were talking about pattern interrupts. We were talking about, you know, embracing change, right? Because not all change is bad. Most of the time, change is good for you, putting you in a new direction. I have pivoted many times in my life, and every single time I have come out ahead. So that's my inspirational message for you today. Thanks for tuning in. Until next time, namaste.